ربي يا الله الله يا ربي يا الله الله يا ربي يا الله.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. Hello and welcome to the Health Show and a Ramadan special series here only on the Islam Channel. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast every day from dawn to sunset. It's a time of spiritual discipline, of deep contemplation of one's relationship with Allah. This includes extra prayer, increased charity and generosity, and intense study of the Holy Quran. And for those fasting this month, we're going to guide you on how to remain healthy throughout the month. The topics we've been focusing on will include eating healthily and weight loss, women's health, and positive mental health. And today we'll be discussing fasting and health in Ramadan, looking at respiratory systems. We'll also be guiding you through common medical conditions that people suffer from, such as asthma and cardiovascular disease. To help us, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Dr. Saeed Abdallah, a consultant chest physician at the Royal Brompton Hospital in London. He's happily agreed to discuss the symptoms and issues related to respiratory, chest and lung illnesses. First of all, Dr. Abdallah, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And it's a very special time of year with Ramadan. What does it mean to you personally?
It's spiritual. We look forward so much to receive the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is the month of the Quran because the Quran was revealed during the month of Ramadan. Time to ponder and study and learn and take the teachings of the Quran. Time to look after ourselves, time to feel compassionate towards each other. So we learn through the feelings of hunger and thirst how to look after ourselves and how to feel about people who are less fortunate than ourselves. I managed to lose 10 kilograms in weight last year, just observing sensible habits such as not eating too much. Basically, Ramadan is only 2 meals instead of 3. A very, very early breakfast, especially during the summer, and a very late lunch. So there is no calorie deficiencies or crash diets or something like that. And fasting is a phenomenon. The trees fast, they shed their leaves. Animals fast, they hibernate. And of course, 1400 years ago, Allah told us that it's better for you to fast if you really knew. Now we know, we have evidence. Obesity is a source of many problems, cardiovascular, respiratory, and other problems. And scientifically speaking, fasting lowers the blood glucose, so you can cure mild forms of diabetes just by losing weight. Fasting produces lowering of the blood pressure, lowering of the cholesterol level. Great advantages. Psychologically, fasting teaches us how to be calm. There is a saying of the Prophet that if you are fasting and someone upsets you, remind yourself that you are fasting. Say, I am fasting, I am fasting. And if we keep these good habits during the rest of the year, so every year we just charge our batteries, if you like, we will be much better individuals.
It's some great advice there, and as you say, it is a perfect moment for reflection to look at ourselves, and an opportunity for us to look at our health. And talking of that, you mentioned about the benefits of fasting, losing weight, and how it can affect chest concerns, respiratory issues, cardiovascular, all of which, of course, are your specialist area. Let's have a look at that during fasting. Apart from losing weight, are there any other things that people should be aware of? Let's say if they are suffering from any of those kind of issues during Ramadan.
With asthma, people who have their asthma very well controlled, who should take the preventer inhaler regularly when they are well to stay well, will certainly have no symptoms whatsoever. So it's very important to take the medications regularly during Ramadan. Sadly, people reject the idea of taking something when they are well to stay well. So the preventer, being a corticosteroid, is not a popular thing. And they rely on the preventer, but they have to take the preventer every 2, 3, 4 hours. Now, when we are fasting and we have asthma, we cannot take the preventer during fasting. Majority of people allow it. I personally believe it's allowed because you are inhaling it into your lungs. But better still, if you can control your asthma by taking the preventers once a day. We have excellent medications nowadays. Once a day, twice a day, you will not need to take the reliever. You will feel better. You will never feel short of breath during the fasting month. Less burden. So it's very important, and asthma is common.
And it's an interesting point that you brought up, because there is the faith aspect to taking medicines during Ramadan. And again, maybe you can correct us in terms of what Allah wrote about looking after oneself during Ramadan, and that one shouldn't put oneself at risk health-wise during that period. And in those circumstances, the fasting rules are a little bit more flexible. Perhaps you could guide us through that a little bit more to make it easier for people to understand.
Yes, Allah said in the Quran in chapter 2 that whoever is ill or is on a journey, it's hardship, then fast on other days. So we have a way out from suffering. So we shouldn't burden ourselves too much. People with acute illness, obviously, severe infections, severe stress, can leave fasting during Ramadan and fast other days when they are better. Sadly, some people are reluctant to fast. And before Ramadan, many people will go to the GPs and say, do you think I'm fit to fast? That is a silly question. GPs will play safe and say, well, perhaps not. Then the individual will think he's got a license, he or she. It's something between you and God. You should try and fast. If you have an illness that is well controlled, that you maintain the treatment when you are well, to stay well, you should fast, even for long hours. Because fasting is so special. It's the only kind of worship that God rewards himself generously about. There is a saying of the Prophet that Allah, glory is His, said, every form of worship is for the individual except fasting is for me, and I reward them for it. You see, we can cheat. Only us and God would know if we are fasting. You may not be able to hide the fact that you don't pray because people look at you, but you can hide away and eat and cheat. So fasting is a special kind of worship. So one should be fit to fast. And if one is able to fast, one should fast. Sadly, there are rich people who can get a fatwa that it's all right to feed a poor person and not to fast. That's wrong. Escaping fasting is sad, and it's a big sin. Benefits of fasting much far outweigh the hardship.
During Ramadan, it's a time of intense reflection, and it's a time where sometimes people might become a little bit more aware of their bodies, and perhaps some of the indications that they have, maybe asthma or respiratory problems or chest infections, could actually manifest itself at this time because we're more focused in that way. If that's the case, what type of things could people notice that should cause them a little bit of concern to go and seek help?
If they suffer dehydration, for instance, they are not taking enough fluids and feel so thirsty, and if they have a chronic illness that they are not supposed to be dry during the daytime, that should make them aware of taking enough fluids and not indulge in taking rich food. Sadly, again, most of Muslims would break their fast on rich food rich in fat and carbohydrates, sugars. We should think of it as taking a breakfast, a light breakfast, and that is for the pre-dawn meal, And dinner should be a reasonable dinner, not a banquet. Sadly, we save money, and I say we, most of the Muslims, to spend more on food during Ramadan. That is wrong. We should watch our weight, especially if we have a cardiovascular disease, such as high blood pressure or angina. That is blockage of the heart muscles that causes pain on exertion. We should watch ourselves, weigh ourselves daily or every other day, and take advantage of the opportunity to lose weight. Because to lose weight is by itself a form of treatment. It can lower the blood pressure, it can lower the blood sugar, can lower the cholesterol level.
And interestingly enough, one of the things that people do, which is directly linked to chest problems, respiratory problems, and cardiovascular, is smoking. And many people, that's almost the first thing they reach for at the end of their fast is a cigarette.
Absolutely. Now, scholars differ in pinpointing the harm of fasting and whether it's allowed or it's a big sin. I personally believe that smoking is like alcohol. It was not banned because there was no smoking in those days. But common sense dictates that if alcohol is awful, drugs are awful, nicotine is a drug and it's awful, and we know that smoking causes lung cancer, breast cancer, bowel cancer, thyroid cancer, renal cancer, name it, you name it, every kind of cancer. So it's an opportunity to give up. We are lucky now we have the vaping. Vaping is safe. So people can vape when they break their fast instead of smoking. Vape before they start their fasting. And it's a great opportunity because it is killing themselves. There is a Quran that says, don't put yourself at harm. In Arabic, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. So it's important. By smoking, we are really committing slow suicide. 99% of smokers get emphysema, destruction of lung tissue that cannot be repaired, life of misery. Fasting should help us get rid of
I was going to say, fasting is often a good opportunity to develop better habits. And we should say, actually, with the vaping, is that although, most people would recognise vaping is much better than cigarettes, I think the jury's still out a little bit on whether or not long-term it has any effect on you. But coming back to this whole thing of changing your habits for the better, this is a perfect opportunity, isn't it?
Indeed. Eating habits. Eating in between. The big problem is eating in between. When we have a cup of tea, it's never only a cup of tea. There's a one biscuit, maybe two, maybe three. So frequent every 2 hours, having something, snacking as they call it. That is a major cause of weight gain, unnecessary weight gain. While fasting, we don't need to, because we are fasting. We don't snack, we don't eat in between. And fasting also helps us to keep the habit. Now, Michael Mosley of the BBC took the 5-2 diet from Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, because he fasted Mondays and Thursdays. I fast Mondays and Thursdays. It's wonderful. The joy of looking forward to break your fast. And it's wonderful.
Let's talk a little bit about you again now when we look at Ramadan. We've talked about a great opportunity to change one's habits for the better so we can improve our health. Absolutely, weight is a massive aspect to the diseases that you've been talking about. How do you break your fast? Talk us through that period for you from your first moment that you break your fast right up until the beginning of the next one.
I break my fast on a date or a glass of water or sometimes milk. And there is a saying of the Prophet that these are good things to do. But a date means a date, maybe 2, maybe 3. Some people say 7. But some people eat so many dates, they are too full. So it's 1 or 2. And coffee, I have a weakness for coffee. So a cup of coffee with a date, then you go and pray your Maghrib, that's sunset prayer. Then after that you sit to your meal, which is the main meal, and don't indulge. Those biklawas and kunafa and kataif, these are Turkish sweets, very, very rich in calories. Avoid them and eat sensibly. Sadly, if we are eating a small portion during the year, we eat 2 or 3 portions at dinner during Ramadan. That is wrong.
And what type of foods are really good to keep your energy through the day? So, say, for example, you're about to fast and you're looking for a meal or something that's going to set you up for that fasting period. So maybe you get that slow release of energy, but it's not going to go straight to the bad parts of the body, as it were.
The pre-dawn meal, which we call suhoor in Arabic, should be a breakfast. So I would take my cereal and an apple. That's my breakfast on every day. So I do that during Ramadan. Sadly, some people take heavy, like English breakfast. That's too bad because it's oil and carbohydrates and they indulge. It's like a dinner, but I think they are going to fast for many hours now, up to 18 hours. But that's wrong because you can't go to bed after that with a heavy, having had a heavy meal with a big stomach. So it's breakfast, cereal, cup of tea, fruit.
And what are the things to particularly avoid that maybe give you that spike of energy, but then leave you actually then quite hungry afterwards?
Rich food, like a pastry, those kinds of pastries that they don't write how many calories they have, probably 500 or 600. Pieces of cake, gâteaux, rich food. Sadly, people indulge. So a breakfast is just a light breakfast and an ordinary dinner.
I'm thinking particularly now again about respiratory issues, exercise. We all know that gentle exercise is always good for us. For those with respiratory issues, obviously need to be a little bit more aware of their bodies during that time. What's your view on exercise during Ramadan, and especially for those who have respiratory concerns?
Exercise is always good. People with asthma try and avoid exercise so they don't feel breathless, so they don't need to take regular medications, and that's wrong. Exercise. Take your preventer once a day or twice a day. You reduce your requirement of the reliever. And exercise, push yourself. It does no harm at all. And people with chronic conditions like chronic bronchitis, who are susceptible to acute infective episodes, should take a preventive courses of antibiotics once a month.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you often hear this thing: we should get ourselves out of breath once a day to really to get the heart working.
That's useful. Yes.
And what about we've talked about medications, but what about seeking medical help during Ramadan? If you notice something, what sort of things do you feel that people might notice about themselves that's a little bit different, maybe because of fasting, maybe because it's a change of lifestyle during Ramadan, that actually, you know what, you really need to go and speak to somebody?
There should be no problems at all with fasting if people observe the simple advice, that is, light, healthy meals, both during breakfast and the pre-dawn meal. Now, when you say breakfast or breaking the fast, that's the main meal. When I say breakfast, I mean the one before starting your fast. Make it a light meal. You shouldn't really expect to have any problems or issues at all. It's the contrary. If you eat sensibly and exercise and avoid indulgence, then you'll be fine.
So you talked there a little earlier on about anybody who might be using an inhaler and how they can deal with that during Ramadan. Are there any other things that, I'm just thinking for people who are watching, who've looked at this particular episode, looking at the fact that we're talking about respiratory issues, cardiovascular, chest concerns and so on, is there anything that they need to be a little bit more aware of at this time?
Taking the preventer regularly, and that's a huge problem convincing people. If people take the preventer medicine for asthma, when they are well, they will not feel breathless. They will not feel the need for taking a reliever. They don't have to worry. But if need be, it's allowed. Oral medications are not allowed during fasting, but inhaled medications are. We have to remember that some people have severe asthma, and they, in spite of taking the regular preventer, they still could need the reliever. Those people have a choice. If it is too much for them, they are so breathless. If they feel that fasting makes them more breathless, needing more reliever, don't fast. Allah is kind. Feed a poor person for each day and don't fast. And if someone has bad asthma that is not supposed to get any better and is controlled with so many medications, don't fast. The same applies for people with severe cardiovascular disease, like severe coronary artery disease. They are really breathless on very small exertion, minimal exertion. Don't risk it. So if during fasting you feel that you cannot cope either with more breathless or more chest pain than usual, then don't fast. But the only one who knows whether or not you can do it is yourself.
Some really great advice here, and it's particularly interesting to hear about those with respiratory issues, you know, what to do with inhalers and so on. And as always, we always recommend, if you're in any doubt with anything, go and see your doctor.
Indeed.
What would your final tips be? We've just got about a minute left. So what would your final tips be to anybody watching to make the most of Ramadan, to have an enjoyable Ramadan and a meaningful Ramadan, but also a healthy Ramadan?
Eat sensibly. Don't indulge. Don't overdo it. 2 meals instead of 3, and 2 sensible meals. And exercise, and take your preventer when you are well to stay well, and aim to get rid of your bad habits, i.e. smoking.
As you say, it's a great opportunity to get rid of our bad habits, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a really good time to really refocus on not just only faith, but also on what we do on a daily basis.
Indeed, indeed. Feeling compassion, especially. We learn about that through the feelings of thirst and hunger. We feel for people who are less fortunate, so we can help people.
And as you said earlier on, if you save money on your grocery bill, which you should do during Ramadan, there's a perfect place for all that saving to go to charity.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's
been fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you have it, some important and really helpful advice on looking after your health for Ramadan. Now, we must stress that should you suffer from any medical problems whatsoever, it's always highly recommended that you contact your doctor or GP, as the health show in this Ramadan special gives you an alternative viewpoint to the health concern being discussed. I'd like to thank our expert today, Dr. Saeed Abdallah, a consultant chest physician, for coming onto the show. And if you'd like to find out more about today's topic, or if you'd like to get in touch with our expert, then please do email us at healthshow@islamchannel.tv. Join me next week, where we'll be discussing women's health with a gynecologist looking at pregnancy, breastfeeding, menopause and the menstrual cycle. But for now, goodbye, and we'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Allahu, Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah.
La ilaha illallah. محمد رسول الله